What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to offer my rave review for Havoc, the latest action movie from action maestro Gareth Evans, starring Tom Hardy. And because it doesn't drop on Netflix until tomorrow, I'll go spoiler-free. But it's kind of hard to spoil action movies where it's like, oh my God, that scene was so cool when he shot that guy in the face. Or, oh my God, it was so cool when he was, rolling on the floor and throwing guns to his friends. But there is actually a plot here. Like, this action movie is a legit movie where, how can I say this? For like the first half of the movie, I thought it was just going to be a really intense, disturbing, cop drama about like corrupt cops and gangsters and that sort of thing, but actually be kind of mild on the action. And then at about the halfway point, Gareth Evans was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm the guy who directed The Raid Redemption. I'm the guy who directed The Raid 2. I'm the guy who directed the best episodes of Season 1 of Gangs of London. And then he gives us some action scenes where I was like, holy shit balls. I mean, the action's so insane and so intense, it's going to just set people's brains on fire. And as you can tell from the sound of my voice, I've got a little bit of a cold right now. And I was on the sofa and I was, not really in the mood to watch a movie. And I was like, fuck it, let's just watch Havoc. Maybe it'll put me in a good mood. And when those action scenes got underway, I was like, I sat up. I was like, shooting snot rockets. I was like, all right, I am totally invested. I couldn't believe what I was fucking seeing. It just rules. So much so that I have to ask a question. Is the action movie starting to make a little bit of a comeback? I feel like as the superhero dominance starts to subside and die and fade away, other genres are rearing their heads again, like the horror genre. I've talked a lot about the health and vigor of the horror genre right now. And if you're a horror fan, well, then you're very well fed. But I think the action genre is making a comeback because we've had some lame action movies, some very solid action movies, and now some really good action movies in very recent memory, and I'm all for it. Like warfare, here's a question. Is there a difference between a war film and an action film? For me, there is a subtle distinction. While war films do have action, warfare is going for a very different effect from Havoc. Havoc is trying to thrill us. It's trying to get the blood pumping. It's trying to get your adrenaline going, and it is very successful. Warfare is almost kind of like battering you into submission. Absolutely we're seeing, very worthwhile. Havoc is offering something very different. Or Sinners. It's like a movie about the blues, and it's a movie about vampires, but it also has a ton of action. Not really an action movie, but it has a ton of action in it. The Accountant 2. Awesome movie, but I think sadly The Accountant 2 is going to get kind of obliterated or eclipsed by Havoc because Havoc's action is just so goddamn intense. And we also just recently had A Working Man and The Amateur and Ballerinas right around the corner. So I'm all for the action genre making a major comeback. I grew up in the 1980s. Good, bad, mediocre, didn't matter. I was watching all the action movies of the 1980s. Love the genre, and it's been kind of eclipsed recently by a lot of combat sports. Like, it's been more fun to watch MMA than most action movies. But the good news with Havoc is that you don't have to divide your loyalties because Michelle Watterson, who is a legit badass MMA practitioner who fought in Invicta, who fought in the UFC. I mean, she's awesome. I mean, she was on the cover of the ESPN nude body issue, which I cannot share here because I'll get, flagged for naked ladies and that sort of thing. But if you like martial arts and beautiful women, definitely check out that ESPN body issue, or just watch her in Havoc because she's so ruthless and lethal and just so hardcore. And that you're like, oh my God, like who is that girl? Like, how come she hasn't already made 10 or 15 amazing action movies? Well, it's because she had a very successful MMA career, but now she's free to do kick-ass movies like Havoc. And I think that's further proof that Gareth Evans just understands down in his bones what makes a great action movie tick. I mean, Tom Hardy is no stranger to MMA himself. He's competed in a ton of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. I think he's been doing it now for like 10 or 12 years, but there are all sorts of pictures of him online getting, winning trophies at local tournaments. But he knows wherever he speaks when it comes to, at least the grappling side of combat sports. And there's nothing that's more infuriating than when you see lazy, clumsy MMA on the screen. Like episode 1 of season 2 of The Last of Us had some of the lousiest MMA that I've ever seen, one of the lamest triangle chokes that you could possibly imagine. Tom Hardy knows how to apply a triangle choke. And while this is not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu movie, anytime the fight goes to the ground, he's going to be more authentic and more convincing than your typical actor. But this is more of like a shoot 'em up than a martial arts movie. In my mind, I kind of created a distinction between like full-blown martial arts movies and like a shoot 'em up. I mean, a perfect example, I guess Gareth Evans, he's so goddamn talented. He kind of blurs the distinctions because The Raid Redemption, you could qualify it as a martial arts movie or a shoot 'em up. Same with The Raid 2 and definitely with Gangs of London. But I would say this movie places a heavier emphasis on really slick, well choreographed, well photographed action over martial arts. But if you want to see martial arts, once again, Michelle Watterson is here to thrill and delight you, not every step of the way, but throughout a huge chunk of the movie. And I don't think this will be controversial to say, but with Havoc, Gareth Evans has proven once again he is the best director of action alive. And some people are going to cry foul and say, what about Timo Tjahjanto? I always get the pronunciation of his name wrong, but The Night Comes for Us is just as good as any movie by Gareth Evans, but I don't think Timo has equaled The Night Comes for Us in the 7 years since it came out, but I'm always hoping that he'll reach those heights again. Gareth Evans at this point has given us several examples of his talents in this arena. And some people might also say, well, fuck you, John Woo's still alive. But John Woo's best action movies were in the 1980s and 1990s. Not necessarily his most successful. I mean, Mission Impossible 2 was wildly successful, but obviously Better Tomorrow 1 and 2 and The Killer and Hard Boiled. I mean, some of the best action movies ever made. I fucking love those movies, and John Woo, may he live to be 1,000 years old. But I think Gareth Evans right now is making better action movies than John Woo. What was that last one he made with the guy who lost his voice? In any case, I still see John Woo movies. I still love and adore John Woo, but Gareth Evans is just, he's on his own level right now when it comes to the action genre. But I'm realizing that I got so excited about singing the praises of some of the people involved with this movie, I kind of forgot to tell you what this movie's about. So here's the official premise from Wikipedia. After a drug deal goes awry, a bruised detective must fight his way through a criminal underworld to rescue a politician's estranged son while untangling his city's dark web of conspiracy and corruption. And what I find really interesting about this movie is that it's not a New York crime story, it's not an LA crime story, it's not a Chicago crime story, it's not a London crime story. It just takes place in this kind of fictional, ambiguous, corrupt city where it's like a corrupt city on steroids where if there's a car chase, it's the most insane car chase you've ever seen. If there's a shootout, it's the most insane shootout you've ever seen. If there's a corrupt politician, he's the most corrupt politician that you've ever seen. Like everything is just dialed up to, 11 to borrow a cheap cliche, but it is dialed up to whatever is the max. It is dialed up. And I should add that Gareth Evans decided to shoot this movie back in Wales, an environment that's not necessarily renowned for its big, heaving, corrupt, metropolises and that sort of thing. It's completely in the world of its imagination, and that's what makes it so cool, because the design of the city, he's not beholden to any established geography or any preconceived notions about what the city has. Like, you can have basically like an American system or environment, but it's totally understandable if there's like a big, thriving, like Asian crime syndicate unfolding right in the middle of it. Because once again, this is all in the world of his head, his imagination, and he can kind of do whatever the hell he wants. And it just allows him total freedom to create one of the coolest action movies that's been made probably in this decade. And like I said at the beginning of my video, Gareth Evans really takes his time in establishing this world and these characters. Like, we really get invested in Forrest Whitaker's character as this corrupt politician who's just looking for his son who's gotten into trouble, and he's desperate for Tom Hardy to save him before he gets himself killed. Like, that's really well established, and you get invested in these characters. And we know that Tom Hardy and his fellow police officers like Timothy Olyphant, they've got something, they did something horrible in their history in service of Forrest Whitaker, and now he owes them a debt, they owe him a debt, but like they're basically all the ability to put each other behind bars for many, many years. But we know that they're all corrupt and they all have dirt on each other, and that's really well established. And the big surprise was actress Yo Yan Yan as the character just known as Mother, and I can't really go into details as to why she plays such a prominent role in the story without going into spoilers, but she was a huge surprise, and her acting, she is stone cold and ruthless. She's so hardcore and so psycho that when she walks into a room, and she doesn't do like martial arts or shootouts or anything like that, she's just a leader, but she has such gravitas and such presence. She makes all those lame American girl bosses that we see in all of our major franchises these days just seem so pathetic and so trivial by comparison. Like, Mother in Havoc is the real girl boss, but she's like an actual girl boss, like a real boss where people, they bow when she enters the room and they're terrified of her. She is fucking incredible. I did not see that coming at all. So once again, all these characters are brilliantly established. And then there's this one scene, more or less like the exact halfway mark in the movie, where there's a spark and an action scene starts. And then pretty much, apart from a few breaks, it's nonstop action until the very end of the movie, which was Gareth Evans' his goal. Because of the press screener that I received from Netflix, they sent me some production notes, which included kind of the pitch by Gareth Evans, which I'm going to share with you right now. So here's the quote from the intro to the press kit where he says, "I said, all I want to do is this 100-minute action film, and all I had at that moment in my head was an image of a cop at a crime scene, scooping a mound of cocaine into an empty coffee cup," says Evans, and that's all I had. And luckily for his leading man, he has the perfect dance partner for Havoc, Tom Hardy. And Tom Hardy obviously has been giving us great performances over the last 20 years. Everybody loves him as Bane in The Dark Knight Rises and stuff like that. But he'd been kind of drifting into some really cheesy shit like those 3 Venom movies. I fucking hate the Venom trilogy. I know he got very well paid. He probably has generational wealth for him and his kids and his grandkids until the end of time, thanks to Sony and those Venom movies. More power to him. Get paid whenever you have to. But I don't have to like the movies. He's awesome in Havoc, gravitas, hardcore, has a serious dark side, guilt, all that stuff. It's great to see him just when he's got so many conflicting emotions and so many divided loyalties, because there's scenes in this movie where you have so many different gangsters and cops and corrupt cops and pure cops and all the different characters with divided loyalties with different degrees of corruption, where you don't quite know whose side they're going to be on, and you might even see people changing sides in the middle of a shootout where one corrupt cop and an even more corrupt cop might have guns at each other. But if a bunch of assassins from the Far East show up planning on killing the entire room, well, then they might have to temporarily team up to defend each other and that sort of thing. And so it's great seeing the way people will kind of change their targets in the middle of a fight scene. And there are definitely scenes where the action unfolds in glorious, with a perfect, glorious mayhem. But there are also scenes where it's really brief and really intense, where without saying what or how or why, there's an individual who gets kidnapped at one point, and these people pull up on motorcycles to grab him. But in order to grab him, they need to kill everybody in the car. And it happens so quickly in such a dramatic fashion where you're like, oh my Lord, how am I going to recover from that? But anyway, it's all just so fucking fun and so visceral and so intense and exciting. And another ingredient this movie brings back in a big way, it lets guns be guns. And what do I mean by that? There are a lot of action movies that have come out over the last 10 or 15 years where they have digital muzzle flare and digital blood, whoever's getting shot, where it's well, this just looks fucking stupid. It's not even as good as a video game. What are we doing here? It doesn't actually look like anybody's being shot, where it's very clumsily adding in the blood after the fact. This movie's so goddamn intense, where it's a weird thing where you feel conflicting emotions, where somebody will do a really slick move with a really cool dramatic shot, but then when they fire, it's then it turns into Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where the gore and the blood is so horrific and so over the top. You don't quite know whether you should react in horror and vomit from all the blood and carnage, or be thrilled and excited by watching a director who's in full command of his skills as a director of action, and in pretty much every way, shape, or form, from his camera moves, from his lighting, to the intensity of the brutality of the action, and also just the emotional investment in the characters. Yeah, I think Gareth Evans more or less kind of stands alone in the action genre right now. I'm just thrilled this movie exists, but it's also kind of bittersweet, because I do think this movie deserved a big, fat theatrical release. So quick question for all the Netflix diehards out there. What would Netflix lose if they gave more of these movies a very brief theatrical release to drive up interest before dropping them on their platform? Because I've been listening to a lot of interviews lately, and Netflix, obviously they've got over 300 million monthly subscribers. Their stock's at an all-time high. When it comes to technology and changing tastes and that sort of thing, they are winning this competition. Not only did they win the streaming wars, I think they're now, their market cap's 4 times bigger than that of Disney. It is the largest entertainment company in the world apart from YouTube, and I think YouTube is the only real rival. But they have completely different businesses. YouTube is user generated. Netflix is premium content, or in theory, premium content. They at least strive for premium content here and there. But now that they've won, and they're talking about building amusement parks or theme parks, or going into different businesses, because at a certain point there are only but so many more subscribers you can find. Why not go into theatrical? Why not? Because when it comes to what drives subscriber growth and subscriber retention, it's the shows. People want to stick around for their favorite shows, whether it's Stranger Things or Wednesday or whatever. Movies aren't the main driver, but perhaps they might be more of a driver if you put them in IMAX screens for 1 or 2 weeks, get people really fired up and excited, and then drop them on the platform. Because right now, when their movies drop, sometimes they kind of come and go without people even knowing that they even exist. I feel like their movies kind of drop into this black hole. And I would have gladly paid to have seen Havoc on a big IMAX screen, and probably would have gone back for second and third helpings and brought friends or family members along for the ride just so they could have that experience. I think Netflix is leaving money on the table, but obviously Netflix knows what they're doing because their company just keeps growing, while all the companies that engage in theatrical seem to be shrinking. But my biggest concern is that Havoc would just kind of drop into that Netflix black hole and just never get seen. And it felt like it did drop into a black hole for a long time. This movie was shot in 2021, and then they needed to do reshoots, but those reshoots were interrupted by the strikes. And then they finally did the reshoots. It's finally getting released, but for 3 or 4 years there, I kept hearing, "Oh, Havoc's coming, Havoc's coming." I was like, when? Are they deliberately burying it because it sucks? And the answer is no. The movie's incredible. It just was the victim of so many outside forces that delayed its release year after year after year. But now that it's here, now that it's gone through this tortured journey to reach the screen, I just want people to fucking see it, because I think there are a lot of people out there who just don't know what real action is, or they just haven't been exposed to it because they've been drowning in all these kind of subpar generic superhero movies for the last 10, 15 years. And really intense graphic shootouts are nothing new, but I feel like each generation kind of needs to rediscover it all over again in the hands of a different director. Like Arthur Penn at the end of Bonnie and Clyde in 1967 gave us the fucking slaughter of all slaughters, especially for that time, and blew people's minds. Or Sam Peckinpah with the climax of The Wild Bunch. And of course, he would continue to refine that action style with movies like The Getaway, but he definitely captured a generation. Or Francis Ford Coppola with The Death of Sonny and The Godfather. People were just floored by that. Or even John Woo with movies like The Killer and Hard Boiled in subsequent decades. Or even friggin' Gareth Evans himself. When he made The Raid Redemption, I think a lot of people had just completely forgotten that kind of action was possible. And it just completely, totally threw a hand grenade into the culture. But sadly, he spawned very few imitators. And some people are going to say, "Oh, what about Chad Stahelski and the John Wick and things like that?" I love the John Wick movies. I thoroughly enjoy the John Wick movies. I don't think Chad Stahelski is on the level of Gareth Evans at all. And what's interesting is how Gareth Evans' style, it continues to evolve. He's doing something new here, which I hadn't seen before. Actually, I'd seen it once before. I don't know if y'all remember this or not, but there was a kind of a viral Kickstarter short film 10 years ago called Kung Fury. And we've been eagerly awaiting the sequel for years, but it's tied up in all sorts of legal issues with the investors. I don't know if we'll ever see Kung Fury 2. But the original Kung Fury, where you see cars, which you know are digital cars, but they look like real cars, but doing things that cars can never do. But it's not like the Fast and the Furious movies where you're just constantly calling bullshit. Somehow you get invested because the style is so slick and it's so visually compelling that you just embrace it. But there are cars doing things in this movie which you know they can't do, but the world at the same time has still got this kind of gritty, foreboding atmosphere. But somehow Gareth Evans is able to straddle that line without breaking the verisimilitude of this world, where you just accept the fact that in a car chase, cars are going to take off and do things that they ordinarily would not be able to do, thanks to the laws of physics. So he's blending the world of fantasy and reality, where it's like reality on steroids, where once again, it feels like a real city, but it's not a real city. It's a city only in its brain, where both the action and the car chases are in their own kind of unique realm that have the impact of reality, but are not real at all. And I just think it's cool seeing how Gareth Evans continues to explore new terrain, and I'm really excited to see whatever the fuck he wants to do next. And I think what separates Gareth Evans from so many of his peers is that he's willing to let his characters really explore the darkest impulses imaginable, like whether they are morally compromised or kind of like living in a shade of gray environment, or fully good or fully evil. Every character in this movie is capable of really surprising, horrific acts of violence where you're like, oh my God, I did not see that coming, but I'm enjoying it all the same. So don't look away from the screen. This is not second screen content. This is not content to watch when you're fucking around on your phone or folding your laundry or going through your mail. This is first screen content. When you watch Havoc, turn off the lights, turn off your devices, focus entirely on this movie. You're not going to want to miss a single solitary detail. And I think there's a giant audience out there these days that wants just kind of disposable, bland content that they're always kind of playing in the background but not really paying attention to. But like, that's what YouTube is for. I love YouTube. But like, if you're listening to a 3-hour podcast when you're just having people drone on the background while you're cleaning your apartment or whatever, like that's second screen content where you don't need to be looking at it. Havoc deserves your full unbridled attention or your undistracted attention. Just get focused, get fired up, get excited. And if you've been craving a really, really cool action experience for a long time, well, the good news is the action genre is coming back, and I fully embrace it. And I just hope that Gareth Evans won't make us wait so fucking long before he delivers his next action spectacle. But let me have a quick glance at my notes to see if there's anything else I can share that's not spoiler related. Boom, boom, boom. You know what? My face is totally clogged with congestion and I'm dying to go blow my nose and cough. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this sucker up. So if I can enjoy this really intensely while not feeling my best, I can only imagine how people are going to feel, like, you know, if they're totally healthy with a cup of coffee or maybe a little, you know, rip a little bong hit beforehand, whatever you want to do. But if you've been excited about Havoc and patiently waiting for it for years, the good news is it delivers. It fucking rules, and it's definitely going to be a strong contender for one of the best movies of 2025. And 2025 is such a weird year because this year seemed like the movies were in so much trouble, and we had such like a dead zone or such a dearth of interesting movies. And now all of a sudden, like in the last couple of weeks, between Warfare and Sinners and this, it's just like boom, 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 like good movies are coming out. 2025 might secretly turn into a really, really good year for movies. And I'm excited for whatever the rest of the year might have in store for us. But let's just enjoy Havoc for now. So thank you so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'd really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.